Please welcome Claire Annesley.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Claire Annesley. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Design and Architecture at UNSW Sydney. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people as the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're meeting here today at the amazing Sydney Opera House. I pay my respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today with us at this event. UNSW is absolutely delighted to be partnering with the Australian Institute of Architects at their annual conference to present this morning's speaker, Vinu Daniel, Principal of Wallmakers. We'll all have our own reasons for being exceptionally excited about this morning's talk. For us at UNSW in the School of Built Environment, we've got a commitment to ensuring that all of our students understand the environmental impact of the building materials we use, seek to reduce waste and embodied carbon, and foster circular economy principles in their designs. And so we're excited for Vinu's talk today as he embodies all of the qualities that we see in his work. Vinu Daniel completed his Bachelor of Architecture degree in 2005 from the College of Engineering Trivandrum, following which he worked with the Oroville Earth Institute for the United Nations Development Programme post-tsunami construction. On returning, he founded Wallmakers, and it was given that name by others because the first project the practice completed was a simple compound wall. At Wallmakers, Vinu devotes his energy towards the cause of sustainable and cost-effective architecture. He's won many international accolades over the years, including being selected by Arch Daily as the only Indian practice in the list of 20 young practices of 2020, and winning the Royal Academy Dorfman Award in 2022. Vinu is also the youngest Indian architect invited to be a TED Talk speaker and one of only 3 Indians selected in the Time 100 Next 2023 list. So now it's my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Vinu Daniel.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome.
This is a dream come true. First time visiting Australia, so a bit of jitters, please bear. While I was studying the course of architecture in India, it was strange for me to find out that most of my teachers divided themselves into 2 categories. The first category was basically a conservative or a traditionalist, someone who was before the concrete era. And the second category was the modernist, contemporary, with the concrete era. And interestingly, they were mutually exclusive. They never liked each other. And you can imagine what a student would face when he or she says, is there a middle route? So the answer was always no. So somehow after graduating from college, I decided that I would go in the middle route. But 3 things came together at the same time: my graduation, poverty, and Oroville. Now the last one is a place in Pondicherry, in southern India, where I met these wonderful 2 gentlemen who were running an institute called Oroville Earth Institute. And they were teaching mud bricks and sustainable techniques. So the 2 gentlemen, you can see the one with the pouch in front of him is my guru Satprem Maini. He is a French architect who came to India for the love of earth and mud. And he, along with his number 2, Ayyappan, taught us about mud techniques and also taught us about sustainability. They told us to measure sustainability broadly in terms of simple two factors. It's the embodied energy that a material takes and the carbon emission. Now, you can see the tall skyscrapers are some of the very modern materials which we use, and their embodied energies are quite high. In fact, 720,000 is the embodied energy of a cubic meter of aluminum, and even steel also around 672,000. While the traditional bricks and concrete all come to around 6,000, 4,000. So subprime was very meticulous in making sure that we count the calories, just like modern diets. So he was very, he made us memorize literally the embodied energies of most of these materials, and you can find that the mud brick comes almost without any presence on the graph. It's just 572 megajoules as compared to all these skyscrapers. And even the carbon footprint, you can see that it's a simple 54 kilogram per meter cube of construction. But still, I had a small problem with this kind of system. Satprem and Ayyappan followed a very linear mode of practice, which means they would be the engineers, we would be on site, we would practice, we would learn arch techniques, we would just from being a front desk job, we would be literally out in the site, working with workers and making these wonderful mud-based constructions. These are all Satprem's constructions. But it was a linear method of practice. Now, some of you might question, what do you mean by a linear method of practice? Architecture generally is practiced in a very linear method. Is that the engineer would say, the contractor would comply, and the masons would execute. There is no, a talk back. There is no redirection. There is no asking others. So this was a bit difficult for me because I learned very little from my college, and I knew that my practice, if I had to do something different, if I had to go to the middle route, I needed to do something called the architecture of the collective. It's a non-linear route where you are not just directing people to build, but you are forming a collaborative effort, including others into doing this. And as expected, I didn't find a single worker in my home state who knew how to build with earth materials. So I had to start myself. So I brought the machine which makes these beautiful small mud bricks. It just compresses earth into mud bricks. And I had to demonstrate to almost all my workers. And we had all sorts of workers, you should see, from the old to the young. And we made these mud bricks. And to top it off, we also used the theories by Antoni Gaudi, a very well celebrated, all of you would know, who did this wall stabilization of arches and domes. And upon his death, they found out that Antonio Gaudi used a lot of chain steady method techniques, because structurally we had to make sure that our mud buildings were stable and would be not prone to earthquakes and other problems. My practice started without an office. As I told you, I was broke. There was no way I was finding an office and having the capital for it. So we started making drawings in every plane surface we could find, like how you are seeing there. We did chain steady methods in hotel rooms, in cafes, and we stabilized. We got in anyone who was willing to work. We didn't even just see whether they were absolutely skilled or not. Still, we started to slowly explore our techniques. We started to slowly see that it is possible to build slightly more complicated structures, do more arches and domes, and even make an entire building almost without steel and concrete. This is a church which we did in Mattancheri, which had just 4 lengths of steel. And we were influenced by the Tadavando way, the Church of Light. And we wanted to do something with bricks. So this entire church was made with few skilled masons and myself being at the helm. And we kind of found that the collective approach to architecture had a lot of benefits. On the way, I started experimenting with smaller roofing techniques. And I didn't just start a practice. I started literally like a family. So the workers were more like juniors, because when you become a teacher, there is always a sense of learning. There is always a sense of, asking each other doubts. And we started experimenting with mud techniques, with all sorts of techniques. But again, we found that we were not just a vagabond practice. We were not just bankrupt, but we were also ostracized. Suddenly, people started having a problem. And I was kind of thinking, why? It seems if you are doing cost-effective architecture, it shouldn't look nice. It shouldn't have art. If it is a functional building, if you are trying to do something, poor man's architecture, you really shouldn't have any artistic expression. And one big advantage that I had that many practicing firms do not have is that you can find a rhythm when you are practicing with the collective. It's like a dance. Very often you will find that the bricks you make is not just made by you. Of course, an architect alone cannot put all the bricks that he is building. A good example can be seen in this particular building. It's a very small house we designed for a scientist. And we found out that the central courtyard, because India is a hot place, as some of you who would have come would know. And we need our courtyards. And whatever I designed in the center gray space was simply not good enough. It was too small. And I knew that I had to make it as big as the diamond shown in those red dots. How do I do that? And I understood that the only way for me to do that is to actually make the bricks dance while they are going upward. And how do I do that? With all the skills I learned in learning traditional mud architecture, domes and arches, how do I do that? So the simple way was to go onto the site and execute and show them how to do that. We explored the Gandhian architect Laurie Baker's traditional rat trap technique. So what you are seeing there is a rat trap technique, but I just improvised a bit on it. And the big advantage here was my team didn't just comprise of all male architects or anything like that. It was comprised majorly of females who were ready to go to the site and work. And on picture, you can see my wife, Oshin Varghese, who is actually teaching the masons on how to do these particular techniques wonderfully. And very soon, we started to find that the bricks can dance. But with whose help? The help came from all these wonderful masons whom I taught individually of many different age categories. And let's just see what we got. And at one point of time, we had a hiccup. This is why I was talking about the collective architectural front. One of the workers called me on his mobile phone and told me, sir, the arches are not standing, they are falling down because the bricks are simply not really physically able to stand on their own. And you can see in this video that this wonderful mason, before I landed, and I told him, okay, don't work on it, I will come and I will find a solution. Before I came, that wonderful mason, who probably doesn't have the degree or the education any of us have, found coconut stem, those small twigs, and balanced them so that the counterweight on top of the masonry would self-balance it. Now imagine, this ingenious technique is not done by me. And because of that is what you see next. Architecture is always about the collective. You can make bricks dance. You can make all sorts of variations and make a larger and better courtyard, even though the initial space was less. So this is how we started our journey, engaging with the collective, small niches of light without using too much of, and almost all of my buildings are exclusively, passively cooled, and few active cooling techniques are just the fan, just the ceiling fan. No air conditioning is done in most of the buildings which we do. And it cannot be done because it's too expensive for us. But we found different types of spaces. We could explore a lot in terms of how to build a new way in architecture. We found parametric without doing the actual parametric Rhino or any of those things, And engaging with the collective also meant that you have to engage with everything else. So shouldn't I practice more with other materials? I thought, yes. I know that mud was the most eco-friendly material that is available there. But then, we also followed a Gandhian philosophy of utilizing waste from our region whenever we build. And a lot of waste, like one sad part of being Indian is that whenever we come to any other country, we find that it's a lot cleaner and a lot neater, and we tend to actually dump a lot of waste, and a lot of waste is spilled over to the roads and even in the public spaces. We thought this can be an opportunity rather than a terrible misfortune. We thought, why don't we utilize this waste? So soon we found out in one of our clients' site that he was left with it. The neighbors built their houses and dumped all their non-biodegradable waste into our site. So we started to slowly engage with the techniques we already learned with a new material, that is waste. We combined a bit of mud, a bit of waste materials, broken concrete, this, that, and everything, and we made this particular wall. And we even utilized, anyway we went to the scrapyard, so we thought, why not take some other materials? And you can see the windows are actually made of electric meter boxes, which were discarded, replaced by plastic ones by the government. So that means a lot of these electrical meter boxes were waste. So on one side you can see a totally ancient material called rammed earth, where the head of the bed is. And on the other side you can see a totally new material made with the waste of rammed earth, made with the waste that the neighbors dumped. You can find that we can have new expressions, new ways of building. And now I thought, why don't I expand this further? Because this experiment turned to be fun. I actually saved a bit of money, and normally I'm not good in saving money, because every time whenever you do some artistic expression means you lose money. But in this case, I saved a bit of money, and I thought, maybe I should expand this further, this utilization of waste. And we do our analysis. We found out the compressive strength of these walls are good enough. They are more than 4.3 megapascal. Only about 3 is expected out of load-bearing structures. So we thought, why don't we experiment the same material, put it in shutter. This time, don't be afraid about getting it reinforced. Put it inside shutters like rammed earth, and pour the mixture inside. And this is what you get. This is a 3-storied residence called Shikhara, which had the entire building made up of this waste material. So it's not just mud, it is the waste of that particular area, the waste of the neighbor's area. So now we actually search for waste materials from other neighbors' places, that we started to get nicknames. And finally, after 7 years of experimenting with this material, our firm finally got the patent for this particular material called debris wall and shuttered debris wall. There were 2 walls, and we have 17 patents pending. So in some sense, we have been experimenting exclusively with these kind of sustainable techniques. Interestingly, this is a project which was designed by myself and my wife, Oshin, where we thought we will take a bit more further. I am actually a 3rd generation engineer from my family. And somewhere during the early start of 80s, this idea of cantilevered concrete slabs was a big fad at that time, at least in India. And I thought, okay, my mud walls also can take that load. It's possible. And I planned meticulously, made a lot of problems for my structural engineer, but we told that we would be able to balance a cantilevered studio on top of 2 slender mud walls. And that's what we did. But the clients still asked for more. The clients were a wonderful couple, musicians they were. And they said, Vinu, is it possible for you to give us a bit more space for, doing music. We would like to do some concerts. I said, there is only space on the roof for you to do. And it's a traditional Indian roof. What more can I do? But then the idea struck literally to us that we decided that we will do a small niche on the top of the roof, because mud buildings means generally it would be nice if I can get some light from the roof itself. And we were brave enough to build 3 stories of never-ending walls of like shuttered debris wall. And let's see how the finished building, and they did a small concert in that place. And let's just see how the building looks. Thank you. So now it was time for us to celebrate the collective. Can we take it a bit, one notch further? And we were asked to build in various, not just in the southern part of India, we were now asked to build in more hotter and in northern places, especially in Ahmedabad, where the temperature soared as high as 45 degrees, and the temperature overall was getting more and more hotter. And in such a place, we found out that our inspiration was very well in the locality itself. We found out that the stepwells of Ahmedabad gave us a very good idea about how to approach this. We might have to dig a bit inside, and let's try a bit of levels here and there. And Ahmedabad also, unfortunately, during that particular time had floods. So one time it was hot, and some other time it was floods. And during the floods, we found that there was a wonderful gulmohar tree. It's a wonderful tree that grows locally in Ahmedabad, which survived through the seasons. So we decided, yes, this is our guy. So we decided to plant our entire building around that tree. And they wanted a very large expanse. It was a super big house. And we thought, why don't we utilize the techniques that we learned and try to create a central courtyard in there with the use of steps, because the steps actually acted as screens. And of course, as you can imagine, the workers over there never knew the techniques, so we had to teach them a bit. We had to teach the younger architects also, the one which, it's not hijab actually, she's just covered herself with cloth. So we learned, we took our local team, so my main mason Suresh and his team, we all traveled there, we settled in that camp, and slowly we brought out this like a typical parametric shape with mud bricks. With the use of mud bricks, with the use of a bit of steel, we were able to bring these stepwell kind of modifications into that particular building. And thereby, we were able to screen the wind that was channelizing through it and make it a bit more cooler. And we found out that the collective can be practiced in different areas. It can be done in different places. If we were able to go beyond the language barrier, you should understand, every place in India we will be talking a different language. So we were able to break the language barrier and still make like multi-storied buildings in there. And the same clients invited us to do inside the city a multi-storied mud building. They said, if you can. And it was a west-facing site. And I thought, if it is a west-facing site, then I need to cover the west because it is too hot with the mud bricks. And I created this particular idea of having, and it was an earthquake zone. So we had to make sure that there is the, like the basic skeleton of concrete is there, while we used our ancient masonry techniques to complete the building with mud bricks. And you can see here the lady architect Preksha Shah, who is helping with the workers into understanding how to continue with this mud brick technique. So we did something which was not conventional. We did a reverse vault, where the vault is kind of like protruding in front. I will explain that in a minute with the pictures. And soon we found out that some of the workers needed again to be taught. So I also had to help out sometimes to teach them how to do a basic arch, how to do this particular vault techniques with mud brick and stuff, because it was again new city means new laws, new ways to teach and learn. And finally, this is how it came. It was a building with only 3 legs, and the 4th leg was this inverted vault which supported the entire structure. And that is now getting prepared to be used as a commercial structure. So we were able to transcend our limitations, which were initially considered as limitations. We were able to transcend that and say, yes, in an urban fabric, this would work for multi-storied buildings. You can easily do it, no problem. And now we thought, okay, how about using unskilled labor? That is a terrorizing word. All of us are in search of labor. Everybody in this room is in search for skilled labor. So we were like thinking, if we have to promote the sustainable way forward, that would mean we had to slowly take the step of trying to make our techniques so easy that unskilled labor can make this technique. We selected 2 or 3 trees in an obscure site. We were asked by a realty builder to help out in an obscure site. It was a ditch. Nobody wanted to build in that ditch. And the builder asked us to build something there. So tamarind trees are trees which never get destroyed, even in storms or floods or anything. And finding these 3 tamarind trees, I decided that I will go with a new technique. I will simply start, taking mixtures of mud, throw it into the ground, and start building circles around the walls. And this is exactly what that happened. So that is my client, Mr. Baiju, and we made the mix, 5% cement stabilization, done it. That's it. Very simple. Nothing more to do about it. Easiest way to start your mud masonry, no extra work or anything like that. And the workers also learned this pretty decent. So while the workers learned this, we thought it's time for us to start engaging with young school architecture schools and their students. Because in some sense, without engaging with them, we will never be able to continue this practice forward. And very soon, we started to make circles around the trees, and our hope was that we will eventually make sure that these circles, concentric circles, would eventually touch each other, and the load would be transferred to each other. So yes, many colleges came, they were very happy, and they made it their own thing, Actually, sitting in the office is pretty boring. And when the kids come to the place where they actually build, they're much more livelier. They make their own stories, they make their own fun, so they are not really bored about it. They understand that, you learn as well as have your own fun. And now let's see what we eventually built. This building became, won so many awards. It won the best residence award in Art Daily and all in last year, I think. Again, lights. Thank you. So this is our final chapter of our effort of trying to expand what do we mean by the architecture of the collective or vagabond architecture. It's primarily called vagabond architecture. So the first part of it is that you get an unrestricted material palette. The second part of it, so these are all the best part of it. The second part of it is that you can get unskilled labor. That means anybody who is ready to work can essentially build anything. And the third part is unique perspective. Anybody from architecture schools or any practicing architect would know how important that is. To have a unique perspective is probably the most difficult and toughest thing. And now the only problem of this particular architecture of the collective is the last one. Experienced vagabond leadership. That means the boss should be a vagabond. So basically, I am exactly as the name says, I am a homeless, officeless vagabond traveling from place to place almost all the time. Because most of these people would really require not exactly the technical supervision or anything, but more like a moral help or even sometimes, like some doubts and everything. So the only problem with this, architecture of the collective is that the leader should be someone who's ready to take directives, listen to others, see more, observe more, keep observing more, and probably lead a vagabond lifestyle. I don't know how that would work, but at least be more at the site. And in today's modern methods of transportation, I don't think that is a problem. But look at the pros of it. It's most amazing that now we are actually teaching in different universities. This is the Hong Kong University of Architecture, who told us that we can teach vagabond architecture, and we are even doing in different places. And we got invited by other countries saying that would you explore this in the Middle East? So we were invited to the Sharjah Architecture Triennale, And I took the desert soil samples. Desert soil is literally the worst soil to work. Nobody would work with it. It's impossible to work with it. But we found a small idea which we could utilize. We thought, so I brought some of my team. So it's fun to travel, isn't it? Suddenly I'm telling my boys, guys, we are going to Middle East, we are doing something. So the long bearded fellow was my first Mason. So he is also traveling with me to this new place. And the green t-shirt fellow is actually a new Mason. And we had to explain again from the start. So new city means again you start from it. And I was explaining to him how we can do the entire structure with tires. We can literally just put mud into the tires, like how I'm showing in this picture. And we can keep on building like this. And slowly but steadily, I don't know if you guys know about India and Pakistan. So these are Pakistan brothers who are working with an Indian architect, And though we initially had our troubles, we went beyond that. And in fact, the onus of that operation was on my wife, Oshin Varghese, who literally worked day and night with him. And the Binale, Triennale people, organization also was scared. They were like, oh my God, these tires are going to fall on top of us, Every engineer there, sneaking and peeking, would actually comment on that, would start to say, this would collapse on us. And on the eve of so we were running out of time and we had to open it at a certain point of time. And on the eve, I found out one more thing about my unskilled labor, that they were ready to work, but they simply didn't know anything about plastering. They never held a trowel in their life. So we managed to make them stack all these tires and hammer the soil in between. But when the final part of just plastering them came, they simply didn't have the skill to hold a trowel. And then somehow luck struck. And I showed them this video footage of an old Indian lady putting cow dung plaster, throwing it, making patties of it, and throwing onto the walls. Look at her precision. It's amazing how she's throwing it onto the wall. So I told her, you are young Pakistani gentlemen. You are born to do cricket all your life. You are fast bowlers. Make me proud. So the boys took it upon themselves, and they were, really insulted. They were really inspired that they would outdo the grandma, and they started rowing this ferociously. And even when we completed, the organization was not happy with us. They were like saying, guys, we still feel it's a very unstable structure. We cannot allow people to go in. So my wife did one more interesting thing. She poured 20 tons of soil on top of the structure, just to showcase how strong this is. So that is her standing on top of this. And this is how it became. It became one of the most cherished pavilions of that year. It was accepted by a lot of people. And because of this pavilion, it became a bit viral, because most of the workers who were suffering from the tremendous heat of Gulf would eventually go in there. And my son Prithvi, he's here. So what happened is nobody would initially enter the pavilion because they were too scared. But when they saw a kid literally running and playing around inside the structure, very soon the media came, and then people came. And then this is the team. This is the wonderful team of boys whom I will always work in Middle East. It's an extended family. You can see my wife on the side, Shamri is on the side, our lady architects on the side. All of us were there. That's what jointly brings you. Jointly it brings. So we are not just about the architecture or the marvelous things you build, but it's also about what happens. And the poor curator who had to side by me was Toshino Shinowo. So this poor lady didn't know what she was getting into, but nevertheless, at the end, we got a fantastic product. So this was a private video shot by a young photographer and filmmaker who made this. So there is a reason why it was called a 3-minute pavilion. The number of tires that is discarded globally in 3 minutes is around 1,445. So we thought the time that is taken for our pavilion to be toured, for somebody to just get in and get out, it would take somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes. And in that time, again, that many amount of tires are getting wasted in the world. So we duly feel that we need to get a bit more on track with this wasted tires, and we can have a lot of expressions, a lot of artistic expressions, wonderful buildings with this material, because you don't even have to stabilize the soil. The soil is not stabilized, not like the 5% cement added for our mud blocks. This news spread large and wide, and we were invited to different places. Now we are planning to do something in the earthquake-stricken Hatay, where there is a lot of unfortunate debris of earthquake that has happened because of buildings collapsing, often very badly, and the entire city of Hatay has been destroyed. And we are planning to rebuild in that area. And then another thing happened. The director of NEOM, Saudi, who is doing this, this unimaginable things in there, he came down to meet up with the pavilion, to see the pavilion, whether this is actually true, and he wanted to see whether we were real. So he flew all the way down to India to see us and ask us to do a small township in the city of Tehran. It's a small island, if you can see this small island separating between the Saudi and Egypt. So this small island, he said, can you do the project and everything? So I said, yes, of course I can do it, but only on one condition, that I visit the site. Then he said, no, you cannot visit the site. It's, it's too far away and everything. So I said, Guru, that is the only way I'm going to design anything, is only after I visit the site. So I was pretty adamant that I wanted to visit the site, see the place, and then that is the biggest advantage when you go to a site, you meet up with people. I truly believe architecture has more to do with communication than to do with the sketches on your paper or any of those things. So what you are seeing in this picture is me finally getting all the approvals, and they put an Iraqi architect, the gentleman with the vest on the side, and they put the Saudi border patrol with me, because it was still a particular border issues place. And all of us three gentlemen were going through land, through air, through water to reach the final site. And the interesting part was that the gentleman Lati, who is an Iraqi architect, hated every architect. According to him, we are idiots who never know anything to build. We just draw on paper and just force it onto contractor, because Lati changed from being an architect to being a contractor and an executive on site. So according to him, we are all idiots, and I agreed for the most part of the journey, because I don't want him to strand me in any place. But slowly, steadily, I won the argument, and he was very interested to show to me, how this thing would fare. So initial perception of that land was that that land is simply barren, a desert land. But Leti told me, no, you are looking the wrong way. So what Leti did was very interesting. He started kicking the top layer of the soil, because it is virgin islands all over because of the Red Sea and everything. He showed that there is red soil underneath it. If Leti hadn't come, if I hadn't met Leti, if I hadn't gone to the place, I would have never known this. I would have simply summarized, even with all these years of learning earth, I would have simply summarized that this is not suitable for making mud brick. So post Moses, I would be the first person to make red bricks in that area. And this is at least 2,000, 3,000 years after red brick left that particular place in Egypt. So this is the place where we could make the bricks. And we combined again this idea with the tire concepts we have been developing. And we were asked to build in this wonderful plateau, which was around 3 million square meters kind of thing. And they suggested a 300,000, not 300,000, 3 million square feet of construction area all over that basin. And again, this is the place where a local intelligent person can help us. Leti told me, don't be foolish. That is the rain collection area. This is why architects are so frowned upon because they simply find a flat land and they build. Don't do that foolishness. He showed me this map and he told me this is where literally the entire water is getting collected. So select another area in that vicinity. So we decided that we would go small for this. We would build just in one corner of it, but we would go high. And then we would make sure that water in that area is collected for our water usage because it is still a desert. And this is what we eventually did. We envisaged an idea of having a bush in the desert, 60-floored bush, 60 stories of bush. And it meant the tires would look so tiny and so small, it would look like bamboo almost, but these are all vertically placed tires so that it would protect. So we had apartments, we had hotels, luxury hotel with a lot of views, we had elevator shafts, service ducts, everything, and a wonderful OIT in the center of it, and we even had a shopping center in the bottom. So with all these amenities, we designed this. It's called the Crescent, and it is basically a 60 to 70-storied tire building which houses hotels, apartments, villas, schools, all sorts of things, and it protects them, And our air conditioning is much lesser because it is literally the bush in the savannah, something like that. And it protects, to an extent, the amount of dirt and dust that would get in and allow people to freely pass through that particular area. So this is exactly what the rendering specialist did for us. And the OIT is one of the largest, more than 35,000 is put in there. And once the project became kind of a good hit, then they asked us to do the Nahda University, The Saudi University also was asked to do. And in this case, we went in a different methodology. What we did is we took inspiration from termite mounds. And we knew that the termite mound is not what it looks from outside. Inside, there are different buildings. A termite mound is always one building on the outside and another building in the inside. So because we were given the peak of Tiran Island, we knew that we had to make sure that we build an exterior tower and then follow it with the actual buildings in the inside. So we built this massive 60-meter diameter tire towers. And let's just see, and inside were the actual buildings, so that you don't have to air condition them, you can just air condition few of the buildings inside. But the general plaza, because in Dubai or Middle East, whoever has come there would see that it's almost impossible to walk outside. But in this case, you can actually keep the plaza to yourself, have a chat, have a tea, have some discussions, maybe play a bit. And this is how we built this. Entire, more than around 70 million tires will be used for the entire construction. That still would amount to only little to the waste that we produce in the world. And the entire city can be made in this sustainable practice. So it is hollow to the top, allowing in air and water to come in, and it would also help us to be self-sustainable and to do the things that we can do. Be educated, learn more, build more, but without really harming the rest of us. Thank you, guys.